Today, we're digging into one of the most incredible claims in all of human history. The idea that one single life was meticulously mapped out in ancient texts centuries before that person ever walked the earth. We're talking, of course, about the prophecies surrounding Jesus of Nazareth. So let's dive right in.
I want you to just think about this for a second. What if the most influential figure in all of history wasn't some random accident, but was actually the deliberate centerpiece of a plan that was set in motion thousands of years ago? How would that change things?
Okay, here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to start with the main idea, what we're calling God's divine blueprint. Then we'll look at the promises of a king's arrival, the shocking predictions about his suffering, and his ultimate victory over the grave. And finally, we'll get into why any of this still matters today. So first up, this idea of a divine blueprint. The core claim here is that biblical prophecy isn't just a string of lucky guesses. You should think of it less like a vague fortune cookie and more like a super detailed architectural plan, one that was drawn up centuries before the building ever began. And this really is the whole idea in a nutshell. We're not just talking about one book kind of referencing an older one. No, the claim is that this is one single continuous story told over hundreds and hundreds of years, where the promises made way back here find their exact fulfillment way over here, and it all points to one person, Jesus. Now, it's really important to know that people approach this from different angles. You've got the traditional view, which sees these as direct, predictive prophecies and, frankly, overwhelming evidence of a divine plan. On the other side, many critical scholars suggest that New Testament writers were reinterpreting older texts through the lens of Jesus' life, a kind of retrospective fulfillment. For this explainer, we're going to present the claims just as the New Testament authors themselves did.
All right, let's get into the blueprint itself and see how these pieces start to connect. We're going to begin with the prophecies about the Messiah's birth and his identity.
So here is a classic example from the prophet Micah. He's writing hundreds of years before the fact, and he seems to name the exact birthplace of the Messiah. And think about this. He didn't name the big, powerful capital city, Jerusalem. No, he named this tiny, almost forgotten little village, Bethlehem.
And here's where the two halves of the blueprint click together. The New Testament Gospels, of course, record that Jesus was born in that exact town. In fact, there's that amazing story in the Gospel of Matthew where King Herod is frantically trying to find this new king. So he asks his own religious experts where he should look. And what do? They quote this very prophecy from Micah right back at him. Okay, here's another huge piece of that blueprint. This time from the prophet Isaiah. It points to a totally unique, miraculous conception, a virgin birth, and the result would be a son named Emmanuel, which literally means God with us. And sure enough, the Gospel of Matthew quotes this prophecy word for word, saying that Mary's conception of Jesus was its direct fulfillment. Now, what's really fascinating here is the scholarly debate. The original Hebrew word Alma can just mean young woman, but the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the one that Matthew's community was using, chose the word parthenos, which specifically means virgin. This shows you exactly how the early church understood it, as a direct, miraculous fulfillment. Right, so from the king's arrival, the blueprint suddenly takes a very dark turn. It starts to map out a path of betrayal and suffering with what the sources call, well, chilling precision. I mean, just look at this prophecy from Zechariah. It's so specific, it's almost hard to believe. It doesn't just say there will be a betrayal. It names the exact price, 30 pieces of silver, and then says that the money would somehow end up with a potter in the temple. And then you turn the page to the New Testament account, and the details just lock into place. It's wild. Judas betrays Jesus for exactly 30 pieces of silver. Then, filled with guilt, he throws the money back into the temple. But the priests can't put blood money into the treasury, so what do? They use it to buy a potter's field. The price, the place, the potter, every single detail accounted for. And this one is maybe the most startling of all. This is from Psalm 22, and you have to remember, this was written by King David hundreds of years before crucifixion was even invented as a form of execution. And yet here it is, describing the experience in the first person. They have pierced my hands and my feet.
And it even includes that tiny, seemingly random detail about soldiers gambling for the victim's clothes.
And that's really the whole point. The argument isn't just that there are some vague connections, it's that they are incredibly precise. The sheer level of detail, from the town of birth to the exact price of betrayal to the physical description of an execution method that didn't exist yet, it's all presented as the unmistakable signature of an intentional plan. So, all of the suffering and death leads us to the absolute climax of the entire biblical story. It's the cornerstone of the whole Christian faith, the promise of a victory over death itself.
Here's how the blueprint lays this one out. You start centuries earlier with Psalm 16 promising that God's Holy One would not be abandoned to the grave, that his body wouldn't even see decay. Then you fast forward. Jesus is crucified, he dies, he's buried, but on the third day he rises. His body is whole, not decayed. And then that final crucial piece clicks into place in the book of Acts. The Apostle Peter stands up in front of a massive crowd, he quotes that exact psalm and makes the mind-blowing declaration. This was about Jesus. It has been fulfilled.
So, we've walked through the blueprint, the birth, the suffering, the resurrection. But this brings us to the final and, let's be honest, maybe the most important question of all. So what? Why does this ancient collection of fulfilled promises actually matter to anyone today? Well, for Christian belief, the fulfillment of this blueprint is pretty much everything. It's seen as the ultimate validation of who Jesus claimed to be. It means the gospel isn't just a nice story that started 2,000 years ago. It's a message that's grounded in divine promises made through the centuries. It's the confirmation for the work of the Holy Spirit, and it's the authority that fuels the church's entire global mission.
And you have to understand, the case isn't just built on the few examples we looked at today. Sources point to more than 37 distinct prophecies that were fulfilled in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. The argument isn't about any single one in isolation. It's about the cumulative weight of all of them together. The claim is that when you see them all lined up, the odds of it all being a coincidence become, well, astronomically low.
And that right there is why it matters so much. For believers, this stuff isn't just ancient history. It's what they'd call a faith anchor. It's the powerful conviction that if God so meticulously kept his promises across centuries of human history, then they can have total confidence that he's going to keep his promises to them in their own lives today. And so, we're left with this one last, pretty big question to think about. If this incredibly complex, ancient blueprint has unfolded with such stunning precision up to this point, what does that imply about the biblical promises that have yet to come to pass? Now that's a question worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us.